Welcome back to another video. We've got a lot of things to talk about this week. It is August 9th at about 10:38 at the time of recording. And so this week we've got a lot to talk about with marginal risks of severe storms throughout the week, but mostly we're going to have a lot with rainfall. That's going to be what this week is about. So first up, today we do have a lower leveled severe weather risk. The reason I say lower leveled is because it's mostly wind driven. And here in this big yellow area, which terribly drawn by me, which matches perfectly up with that slight risk. Slight is a level 2 out of 5. That typically means that we have some increased confidence that some storms will contain damaging winds, severe hail, and or tornadoes. This one is more damaging winds, if anything. There's a 15% probability throughout most of Iowa, parts of northwestern Illinois, and a lot of Wisconsin, going into that upper peninsula of Michigan. The tornado threat does appear low, as well as hail. Hail does also seem pretty low. Right now in Chicago, I think the tornado risk could potentially be upgraded to, we could be included in that 2%. But right now, Chicago, the green area for wind, which is this bottom left-hand corner, or right-hand, is going to be 5% wind in Chicago. Upper right-hand, that's tornado, very low. Typically, that would mean like maybe a tornado or two in the risk area, if we're correct. And then the bottom left-hand, that's hail, also not too big of hail. All storms are capable of producing hail, but they're not as strong. Now, back into that more rain risk, there is a lot of rain. These areas could see as high as 6.8 inches of rain throughout this week, from today, Saturday, until Sunday, at about 1 in the morning, because we can't perfectly align. This area could see as high as 4.77. With more Chicago, you're kind of just like an inch of rain, so it's not as bad down in Chicago. But certainly a lot of rain to come for the next week, as the maps projected. Now, temperature-wise, we're going to go kind of quickly. Today, I'll show in other models. This is Sunday. It will be cooler tomorrow and Sunday if you're watching on Sunday. It is relatively cool for the first part of the week, but then it gets warmer into the 80s as we go on. That outlook, I believe, is for Monday through Friday. And it doesn't look like 90-degree days. We'll be back until Saturday of next week, and that's when we talk again. Will be the next weekly forecast video. In terms of severe weather, we're looking at, right now, I believe there's a watch. I won't show the graphic. Right now, it is about 15Z, and that is 10 a.m. Storms would kind of... It's very interesting because they won't form in Chicago. They will. But they're weaker and they're like way later. They're late at night, which does not really go to what the Storm Prediction Center is saying. Then we can see we get more rain, but that breaks up. That is the 12Z model. Not as long term. This one only goes out 18 hours. The 14Z, again, it shows storms popping up, but not necessarily hitting Chicago. So they might actually remove us from that risk. I don't think we'll go live. The convective available potential energy, though, is relatively high, with areas upwards of 3,000 here, with 2,000 pretty much all in the green areas. We usually only look for about 1,500 for strong storms. So that is certainly there. Tornado-wise, Missouri, it shows that there's a higher ended tornado threat. And there is that one little cell here that kind of pops up. That could cause a problem. These cells, too, might cause a problem of more hail, if anything. The significant tornado numbers are way lower, though. Plus, the 0 to 3 kilometer cape isn't super high. I think those storms in Illinois might be able to tap into that energy. Hail swath numbers definitely agree with hail, and the lightning density definitely shows thunderstorms and not just normal storms. The SRH, that's another thing we look for. These storms could be supercells, but tornadic supercells, they also could be. but we just don't have all the numbers in place. So that supports that 2% tornado risk for today, at least in terms from this HRRR model. It will get warm back up to 95 in Chicago, 93 in Rockford, 92 in Milwaukee, 90 in Janesville, so it will be relatively warm. And then it cools off. The dew point can also tell us moisture in the air. It's not super high, which is why severe weather is kind of going to be limited, because the higher the temperature, the higher the dew point would be when you have more humidity. But then if we look at the NAM nest, this one isn't as accurate. You could see most likely a cold front or a dry line. If we go into humidity, that would tell us probably a cold front. I actually forgot. And then the Cape kind of pushes down. That could act as a trigger. I have not looked at the maps to see if it was a cold front or not, so we will go into that. Make sure I'm giving you the right information. The supercell composite does seem relatively strong in Iowa. Significant tornado also does seem to support tornadoes. The only problem with these SRH is looking good. That's storm relative helicity. It's kind of like spin in the atmosphere. Shear is how wind changes with the direction they change with height, I believe. And so Iowa, but this one also does tend to over-exaggerate. And that would probably be a cold front forming this line. This is where the wind threat comes from, because it's kind of bowing on the model. And bowing storms usually are associated with higher winds. And even looking at wind gust, there's a small area for that. And that's at 7 p.m. It doesn't seem to hit Chicago, but then watch if there's more rain that might hit. Really does seem to be hit or miss, at least in Chicago as of right now. But these storms are relatively organized before kind of breaking up as they cross over the lake. That's normal in terms of severe weather. We'll just show the Colorado State University machine learning predictions for severe weather. It does show severe weather Monday throughout some of our area, Tuesday in Indiana, and then Wednesday nothing. Thursday kind of moves into Iowa, with Friday and Saturday in our area. I was looking at the models. I'll show those back up in just a minute. The most concerning day does appear to be Saturday at this moment. Friday into Saturday, I should probably be more specific. Both days do seem a little more concerning. Those could be a day to go live. Saturday anytime, Friday later afternoon, because I will not be available until then. Here we are on the GFS, or Global Forecast System model, and this is Friday at 7 p.m. You can see, especially in Iowa, there's strong numbers. I did not draw that good. Strong numbers, Iowa into Illinois. So that area could definitely be more severe. Chicago does kind of seem to miss you. But then we jump into Sunday at 0Z, which would be Saturday at 7 p.m. Then we get into these very high numbers. And the supercell numbers would suggest maybe a tornado threat in Iowa and low grade in Illinois. But not really. I wouldn't think that would be a tornado threat at this time. The lapse rates also show maybe some hail. SRH supports more an Iowa tornado threat, Illinois wind threat. The energy helicity index generally agrees with all this. Lid strength, that's usually not super important because it's the cap, and Cape will tell you. Temperature-wise, it's warm. Dew point-wise, it is very moist. Definitely supportive of severe storms. Even looking there, that is completely white. That is 370 or greater theta E, which that typically will signal some kind of severe weather. The reflectivity doesn't show too much, but then again, reflectivity on these models, they're not convective allowing, so they're not as good.